This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through custom Trace Audio cables and the new Empirical Labs pump compressor mixed through Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, Nectar, and Plasma, all mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
The easiest way for me to make momentum on the song was to get a drummer and a bass player and go into the studio and record the bones, the foundation. Because from there you can build. But you're stuck in the studio, programming drums, the easy drummer or superior drummer or whatever. Kill me now. I'm just not a beat maker, and I need help from people.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Empirical Labs, creators of the famous Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio pros. The Fatso adds warmth to digital recordings with harmonic generation, tape emulation, and compression. The Pump, a 500 series compressor, features 8 selectable ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, and an attack mod for incredible transient control. The Arouser and Big Freak plugins are also available at empiricallabs.com, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects. Perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X, Guitar Rig 7 Pro, and AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Björgvin Benediktsson, an Icelandic-American author, audio educator, and entrepreneur. He is the founder of Audioissues.com, teaching thousands of musicians and producers how to make a bigger impact with their music. Björgvin has been an audio engineer since 2006 and has worked with hundreds of artists as an audio engineer, mentor, and educator. In fact, Björgvin and I have worked together on music, including the Bonnaroo Hay Bale studio, which we did down in Manchester, Tennessee, for a few years. He is the author of multiple books, including the best-selling book Step-by-Step Mixing, which simplifies complex audio jargon and transforms insecure musicians into confident mixing engineers. Something that I think we can all relate to, at least at some point for sure. He has written over 1,000 articles on audio production, and his training has been featured in publications such as MusicTech magazine, the Huffington Post, the Recording Revolution SAE Institute, and Audiotuts Plus, to name just a few. As the founder of Audio Issues, Björgvin helps home studio musicians and project studio producers make a greater musical impact in their lives by teaching them the skills needed to grow their hobbies and careers. He does this by offering simple and practical music production and success skills they can use right away to level themselves up, while rejecting things like negativity and gear shaming from the industry. I think that's another thing we can relate to in many different facets along the way. When he's not helping entrepreneurs, audio engineers, and other creatives, he likes to hang out with his wife, his beautiful and amazing daughter, and a dog in Tucson, Arizona, play video games and read comic books.
Yeah.
Once again, I think that's another thing we can relate to. So please welcome back, because Björgvin has joined us on the podcast a few times before.
Yeah.
Please welcome back Björgvin Benediktsson to Recording Studio Rockstars. Björgvin, my friend, are you ready to rock yet again? Dude?
I'm always ready to rock with you, Lidge. Always.
Dude, it's good to have you here, man. Of course,
Thanks for
full
having me.
transparency. We do see each other every week. We saw each other this morning on our Blammo mastermind call.
Yeah.
But it's great to finally have a chance to just like sit down and talk
Totally.
at length about making music.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. And I'm excited about this. It's always been a fun thing to do with you. Hope to share experiences. Hopefully it'll be useful and is inspiring in some way to your listeners. And yeah.
I think we can just I think you and I can just drop the pretense and we'll just be a couple of dudes who have home studios or are just trying to make songs like everybody else and going through all the same struggles for today.
Yeah.
Because at the core, I feel like that's always at the core of what we do.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you bring that up because it goes to these two sort of identities that I sort of straddle or like I'm sort of stuck between. Is this, accidental audio authority that supposedly knows everything about mixing and all this, has written this book that gets, bought and sells well, and a lot of people read and has garnered some success. But at the same time, I'm also just like a home studio musician trying to figure out, how to make my songs sound good and all that. And although I have this knowledge, it doesn't mean that, some sort of indie musician insecurity and anxiety to my own creative craft and art isn't there. It's you still, new level, new devil, they say, and you always have different problems at any level of your career, I guess.
I like that, man. Actually, I've never heard new level, new devil before, but that's perfect. I think I may have just found a quote for this podcast. You've got some new music coming out. Why don't we just start with that, man? Let's talk about, let's begin by what's on your plate now. But of course, when this comes out, this will be released. And so we'll be able to share links to it, Rockstars. You can check it out. But at the moment, Björgvin, you're going through the process of putting out new music.
Yeah. And it's been a long time coming, gone through quite a bit of change in the last 3-4 years. Obviously, COVID affected me like everybody else. During COVID, we had nothing better to do, so we had a baby.
Good call.
Yeah. And so that completely changed my life, obviously, for the better, for sure, and has put a lot of different things into perspective. I do not care about a lot of things that I thought were important back in the day. I am much more defensive about my life, my time, what I spend my time on, and stuff like that. I also, during that time, I had recently, well, not recently, but I had broken up with a band, or we had disbanded a few years prior to that, and I hadn't been like making music on my own for a really long time. I'd played in bands, and I'm still in a band that we like play live, but it's, I'm just a guitar player that plays the songs and I have a lot of fun doing that, but haven't done any real production of my own for my own stuff. I do a lot of like mix feedback, mix guidance, mix, helping musicians with their mixes and stuff like that. I don't have a lot of credits because I don't usually end up teaching people how to do it themselves, and therefore they release their own music, and they should take all the credit for that.
Right, like your credits are their credits are your credits. In other words,
yeah, in a way. I mean, like I definitely don't want to take any credit for their releases, but I do have a playlist of some awesome songs that my students have released throughout the years. And it's really fun to listen to some of those songs and knowing that like I helped them make it better or whatnot. But haven't been focused on my own stuff as much. So recently, I just decided, I wanna make a new song. What's the least amount of effort I can put in? Creatives often think too big, and then they immediately create obstacles for themselves. And so instead of like starting small and then like growing to something, they're like, oh, I'm going to make this album with a music video and an online set and the tour, and then I'm going to be the biggest artist in the world. And I took the opposite approach, and I was like, I'm just going to make one song. I'm going to get a few friends together. We're going to go into the studio for parts of it. I'm going to hire a few people to help me. I'm just going to do one song as well as I possibly can. And so we ended up doing that. I put a band together. We went to the studio to do drums and bass. Then I did all the rest of the overdubs here in my home studio here. And it's coming out next Friday of this recording, of when we're recording this. And so it's very exciting. It's a sad song. It's not a hit in any way. It's not going to be on dance radio or top 40. It's going to be, but it's like, it's very authentically me in a sort of a, I don't know, maybe like a melancholic way, because the song is really about death, sadness, grief, mourning, like harder subjects,
with big distorted guitars and like super high tempo double kick drum pedal.
No,
come on,
not exactly, but not that you couldn't write songs about that in that genre for sure. But it was a song that I wrote 15 years ago, and I think that a lot of artists, and certainly a lot of my students, and I'm sure your audience can relate to this, is we all have our hard drive graveyard full of songs that we haven't quite finished yet, right? Yeah. I even have a hard drive graveyard full of books that I haven't finished and published yet.
I got a lot of books. Yeah. I make it about this far through every book. I'm pinching my fingers to get real close together, rock stars.
Right. And so I wrote this song 15 years ago or so for an ex-girlfriend of mine that had lost. Actually, she had lost her dog at that point, which, it's sad. It's hard to lose a pet, but she had also lost her cousin in a car accident a couple of years prior to that. So a lot of, so she had this experience with grief. So I was trying to like write a song, and I was in a different country. We were doing a long distance relationship at the time. So I was trying to write a song where I was basically like trying to convey that, like I feel for you. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for your loss. That sort of thing. Like a hug in song form, if you will. And at the time I wrote it, I hadn't really nothing like that had happened to me. I hadn't lost anybody close to me or anything like that. But since then, I've had to experience a lot of that, unfortunately. I think a part of that has just been to get older, but and as you grow, I'm not old by any stretch, but as you grow older, you start losing people, and the people that unexpectedly die are the ones that maybe hit you the hardest. And the band that I was in, that we played this song, we lost our main songwriter and guitar player, Alan Garr, back in 2011. And that was a really, really rough time for us trying to get back together as a band. And then since then, a friend, one of my best friends, one of my first band members, he died under circumstances that aren't quite clear in New York. My uncle, who introduced me to online marketing when I was 13, he died from cancer. Lots of stuff like that has happened to me in the interim. And then And I just had this song sort of like in the back of my head. And it was like, well, I want to put all of the emotions of those experiences into this song. It may be in order to be like have a sense of catharsis, maybe to have a sense of like closure, but also when I initially recorded the demo of the song to send to my then girlfriend, it was just like, I think I recorded it not even with a phone. This is pre-iPhone, so it didn't even have a voice memo. I think I recorded it with,
right. With a cassette.
Yeah.
You had a mailer or a cassette tape.
Not quite, but like pretty bad, like maybe laptop mic recording and whatever. And she loved the song and she like thought it was like really great and it helped her. So like a lot of times we don't think about the value of music is also like how it helps you feel. So in the entrepreneurial space, you're always talking about, oh God, we need to find a problem to solve. And that's how we create a business and whatever. When it comes to art and creativity and music in particular, that's not, you can't really do that. It's not about finding a problem. It's more about talking about your experiences, hopefully relating those experiences, putting those emotions into the vehicle that is music, and then putting that forward, and hopefully that vehicle or that piece of art helping somebody else go through a similar thing.
You talk about value too, and it's like a lot of times you see people posting, kind of complaints or whatever about streaming not compensating musicians for the value and things like that. And that's all understandable, but it's just nice to hear a story like that where you're just reminded that sometimes somebody just telling you that the song, they appreciated it. Like there's totally different ways to exchange value when it comes to art and music.
Right. And I think that a part of me thinks of it as a gift. I'm like, I'm making this song and I hope that it finds somebody that needs it and it's my gift to those that are having a hard time, have lost a loved one. I like to say that this song is for everyone walking around with a hole in their heart where a loved one used to live. And so that's really what that song is about. And as funny as it is to say, like it's a sad thing to write about and produce, but at the same time, it is a catalyst for creativity, because as soon as I started working on this song, I was like, oh, I have these songs, I can start working on this song. It's sort of like as you sort of cleanse the songs that are sort of in your backlog, you start making room for new stuff or stuff that's, next in line. And so it goes back to always be taking action and moving forward with what you want to do, because like you can stay in your studio all day, make music, but if you don't take that last step to finalize and publish it in some way, it's just gonna fill up your room. It's gonna fill up your brain with clutter, and you're never gonna completely sort of clean out the closet in your head that's full of art, right? You kind of have to put it somewhere else in order for your brain to have room for new stuff.
Sick of searching for the right cable or wondering how to hook up your studio? Trace Audio has you covered. Based in Nashville but serving studios everywhere, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, patch bay labels, and wiring solutions for home and pro studios. Try out the free online custom patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com to easily color code, label, and organize your XLR or quarter-inch bays, which are popular with home studios. It's sleek, professional, and simple to use. Then use the code RSR15 for 15% off printing and shipping your custom patch bay labels to take your studio to the next level.
Someone asked me a while back, do you fear AI will one day replace you as a mastering engineer? Well, it hasn't yet. That's because algorithms don't listen to music or to clients. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. When I master, I experience the music as your fans will, with the honesty of fresh ears. And unlike AI, I master with your intentions in mind, not merely to process the mix and boost the levels. If you want an experienced live engineer to master your music as only a human can, find me at soundporter.com.
You know, thinking about you saying that, I'm thinking also about, for me, the record that I put out most recently and fully released is Skadoosh, which is the instrumental songs that are part of this podcast.
Right.
And already it's like, I'm already like dragging my feet about getting the next thing going. So it's time to, you know, that never ends.
Right.
That feeling of got to put something out. But there's this part of me that thinks about like when we put the music out and we release it, like I released it. And then there's a part of you that looks at it and goes, well, you know, like it's out there, you know, how did it change my life? And hearing you talk about it, I mean, sometimes it does change your life. Sometimes it has great impact or whatever, opens doors.
Yeah.
Other times you might think, I don't know, it's just on the internet, you know, it's there it is. But hearing you describe it again, I'm reminded that if I hadn't put the record out, you're exactly right. It'd be occupying all this creative space for me right now as I'm thinking about the next record that I like to put out. So it's just that reminder too, that like just simply following through does free up the zone for you to focus on your next thing too.
Right. Yeah, because there's like, you know, there's the pure creative aspect of creation, like the, you know, making the work. And then there is the finalizing the stuff and putting it out there so that you can make more work. If you don't connect those two actions, you create clutter. And so you'll have creative clutter, and that's not anywhere you want to be, because at that point, you put too much clutter in a room, you can't get anywhere. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, you see my basement because we did Bonnaroo together. We had to go collect, you know, the racks for all the gear from there, dodge the spiders. I think it works for my gym down in the basement because it makes me want to do my workout and get out of there fast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like there's incentives if you can put the right incentives in place for sure, right? So that's the catalyst for that. I'm excited about doing it. A part of me is, you know, making it as an artist, but I'm also not necessarily pursuing being an artist per se. A lot of times I use the music that I make as training materials or tutorials or as examples in my own sort of how-to production work. And so a lot of the music that I make ends up being content that's then either packaged or sold into courses or becomes free content in the form of emails and stuff like that. So
right, and that fits with you because that's a thing that you do well.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good reminder that like for all of us, it's okay to put out music and not necessarily say I'm starting my new career as an artist, but just because that's like what you said, that can be this huge obstacle too, where you're like, you just introduce this imposter syndrome as well. Yeah. Whereas there's no reason why we shouldn't be putting out music just because we love doing it.
Right. And also if you like announce stuff to the world, you kind of, there's two schools of thought to it, is like, if you announce stuff to the world, you already have the dopamine rush of like almost feeling like you've actually done something, even though all you've done is talk about it. Which means that you may not actually end up doing anything. And then the flip side of that is like, even if you decide to do something and you've told everybody about your grand plans, the little stuff that you do isn't big enough compared to what you think the people are expecting from you. And so you're like, you have this different imposter syndrome where it's like, well, if I release this, what are people going to think of me? This isn't what I meant when I announced my, candidacy for Artist of the Year universe, right?
Right.
But at the same time, like, people don't necessarily realize that nobody cares. Nobody's thinking about you. Like, they all have their own stuff to worry about. They're all worried about the same thing that you're worrying about, but they're worrying about it from their own point of view because they have their own lives, they have their own worries. So it's really just a matter of like, what do you want to focus on and what do you want to look back on and have done, even if it's hard to do. If you are just wanting the accolades, then that's like maybe not the best motivator for making art.
Well, when I think about accolades, I think about the difference sometimes between what we're presented with online. So basically, it all sort of, in a lot of ways, it stems from the arrival of social media. All of a sudden, there's this world we live in where there's this like button. How many clicks did you get? How many likes? How many views? How many people look at your Instagram post? And then there's the accolade side that just infuses me with so much positive energy, is those times where I just do a thing, record with people or co-write a song with somebody or get up on a stage and perform. And just, even just a couple of people telling you they really enjoy what you do is so fulfilling,
Absolutely. You probably don't get the same sort of, I would much rather have one person email me and say oh, I read your book, it was great, it helped me do X, Y, Z, than 2,000 likes on a meme on Instagram that I made.
Right.
It's just not the same. I didn't help anybody. People had a fleeting chuckle.
Fleeting Chuckle. That's a good band name right there. The Fleeting Chuckles.
Yeah, right. And I think that a lot of our society, as fast as it moves these days, a lot of it's very superficial, and it's gets harder and harder to do the real, true, important stuff that actually changes who you are and actually matters in the long run. And I talk about this with more maybe seriousness these days because I've realized after having a daughter and after being understanding that role and how much that changes you. And at that point, you realize just what the actual important stuff is. I remember, anytime you watch some movie about some high achieving professional that burned out and alienated his family, but then, bounced back, and then it's always the same fucking message at the end is oh, and then I realized that at the end it was all about, and then Vin Diesel comes in and says family,
Right. And then as he's shifting gears and stopping the gas pedal to the floor.
Exactly. But as silly as that sounds, a lot of that is true. And I don't necessarily mean family is super important, but it's about the people closest to you, the people you love, whether or not they are biologically related to you. There's a lot of different types of families out there, of course. But focusing on the actual important stuff that makes the day-to-day life more fun. I found that to be more important these days than chasing fleeting chuckles.
Chasing fleeting chuckles. Well, when it comes to music too, and family and having kids, I always like to say, and Rox has heard me say many times on here, my kid's the best record I ever made.
Right.
And there's a really literal interpretation to that too, which I like about that.
Yeah.
But we go through that, and then as parents, of course, we get through that initial, it is very consuming in the beginning, having kids and the family stuff, and then we begin to get a little bit of our time back, and we start to think, I do want to make some music. I want to get back in the studio, do stuff. I certainly know that I went through the phase, of chat with my brother and stuff, and go Nate, we should do kids songs, because we listen to a bunch in the car, and I listen to those, and then I'm I could do one of these,
Yeah.
And then sometimes I think about it, I'm what happens later when your kids are growing up? Are you still making kid songs? You better love it a lot.
Yeah.
And that kind of speaks to the that kind of speaks back to the entrepreneurial thing, which is if you decide, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel. Hey, I want to do a podcast. Hey, I want to, write blogs.
Yeah, it's
one of the messages you get is you better pick something you really love doing, so that when the time comes you don't want to do it, you actually still want to do it.
Right. There's some pretty, you mentioned YouTube, there's some pretty interesting children's channels out there. Some of them are absolute trash for sure. That should be banned. But there's also really interesting, wholesome and fun stuff. Danny Go is probably one of my more interesting favorite ones, because he's just so happy about, he makes music and everything is song based. And they're like pretty decent songs. Like they're like, oh, these are good productions. These are good beats. I mean, they're silly children's songs or whatever, but like they're catchy. And like you can see like my wife got really into researching Danny Go because she's like, what are these YouTube personalities? They have millions of views. Like what's their net worth? and then she like goes down a rabbit hole of like researching what it is. And turns out if and I hope that the parents that know Danny Go listening are laughing about this with me because and are familiar with it. Because if you watch a video, you usually see a guy dancing that's wearing a bear hat. And as I understand it, that guy is the producer. And like he makes the songs and the beats. And then I think Danny sings and probably plays some instruments too or whatever.
So he gets like a wordless, he's like, oh gosh, I just forgot. Who were the name of the two characters? And God, oh man, my memory these days. But there was the Silent Bob. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Sure.
He's like the Silent Bob character. I think Silent Bob was also the film producer, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was the director. Yeah, it's Kevin Smith.
Director. Yeah, there you go.
But like
that's the way to stick yourself in as a cameo.
Yeah, but I think I also like he never appears actually because he always wears a bear costume. So I wonder like if he's trying to be on the down low, making different kinds of music somewhere else. But like, I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff like that of if you want to make music as a career, and you can stomach it, like children's songs is a huge genre, is a huge niche.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen some really clever versions of that. My friend Michael Gigante, who he's a composer and a producer. He created an entire channel where they recreated 90s hits, like Nirvana songs, as like music box, almost like lullabies.
Right.
Because it's like this clever idea, which is like, hey, you know what? People are, the parents, they want to put something on to put the kids to sleep, but they'd rather hear a song that they know. It's the music concept, music concept. Yeah. I used to go into grocery stores when and I'd hear music on the music. It's hard even to say it on the radio, and it'd be like the piano lick of some pop tune. I'm like, that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of fun. I want to do that.
Yeah. There's this cartoon on Netflix called Beat Bugs, and it's these bugs, cartoon whatever, but it's all about it's all Beatles songs. It's all like nice. Every episode is a particular Beatles song, and there's like versions of the Beatles song. So it's like entertaining to maybe not watch with full attention. I don't think I watch any cartoon or any children's material with like my full attention, but like it's fun to listen to at least. Because, it's good music.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up. It's been a minute. Apologies to my guest. We had a guest on the show many years ago who was putting Mother Goose rhymes to music.
Sure.
And making videos. And they were like, their videos were 50 million views, 100 million views. It was really, really an impressive thing. But anyway, circling back a little bit.
Yeah.
When you hit the studio, let's talk a little bit more about that. So you are putting your new single out.
Sure.
What are some of the decisions you made about how you're going to put it out into the world that you think might be useful shared tips about like how to release a song? And again, I don't mean to put you or anybody on the spot for like, this is the only way to do it and the best way to do it.
Oh, no.
But I know you've also heard a lot of good examples from people because you've been paying attention to this stuff and studying it. Like what do you want to do? And what are some really great stories you've heard about other people releasing their music and doing clever things?
Yeah. So when it comes to releasing, I mean, I certainly don't have experience like releasing music to a huge fan base and getting millions of streams and stuff like that. But it's easy for me to make songs and take them from start to finish. And I think a lot of my students have a little bit of a myopic view on what what they want to accomplish, and they sort of don't necessarily think about collaboration. And so they think that they should be able to do it all themselves. And I started Audiotuts, and my main audience are home studio musicians that are making their own music in their home studios and releasing their own songs. But that doesn't mean that you have to learn how to play every single instrument, and you have to be the multi-instrumentalist that knows how to write, record, arrange, produce, mix, master, design the album cover, and promote the marketing, whatever, right? And it's the same with if you start a business, is like you should not do everything in your business. You should learn how to delegate and hire. And I think the same thing goes with making music, is understanding where your limitations are and where you are not good at things, and who you can get help from, and who you can either hire or ask for help, because there's two ways of doing it. You can ask friends and collaborators or band members if you already have them, or you can hire them. So I had the privileged position of having friends that were also professionals. So I just called on my sort of extended network of musicians and to make this song, for instance. And I decided, I wanted to pay everybody, because I think that, the music industry doesn't turn if there's no money in it. There's a lot of like negativity when it comes to like, oh, there's low budgets, there's no music, there's no money in the music industry and all that. And sure, there's like some of the pessimism is probably accurate, but the greatest indicator of economic growth isn't the amount of money, it's the velocity of money and how fast money changes hands. Mm-hmm. Because like if I pay you $100 and you go home and you feed your kid, that is more valuable to society than if I just hold on to my $100, right?
Right.
And so I think that indie musicians do not think about this in this way, because maybe they didn't maybe they didn't go major in economics like I did, but I think that having like a real big picture, holistic view of like, what do you want to accomplish? How do you want to make an impact? Like, I want to make a song. Hopefully it'll help people go through whatever they're going through. But at the same time, as I'm making the song, it's like, how can you make an impact while you're making the song? Like, how can you tell stories about the song that helps whoever's recording in their home studio? So that's what I do. Like, I'll talk about my recording process. Hopefully that'll inspire somebody to record. But I also hire musicians so that I put more money into the scene, and that hopefully trickles out in such a way that you make an impact in ways like that. So
at Isotope, saturation just got a whole lot smarter. Introducing the new Isotope Plasma plugin to supercharge your sound by giving your tracks exactly what they need, precisely when and where they need it. Unlike traditional saturators that apply a static effect, Plasma's groundbreaking flux saturation technology analyzes your sound and applies dynamic processing, adding targeted warmth, depth, and character to bring out the best in your mixes and masters. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off the new Plasma or any of the awesome plugins at isotope.com. Atom Audio proudly announces the D3V active desktop monitors and H200 dynamic closed-back studio headphones, designed in Berlin for pro-level monitoring in home studios. The D3V features 3.5-inch woofers with ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact design ideal for songwriters and producers. The D3V includes USB-C and balanced analog inputs, a headphone output, and DSP room acoustics. The H200 100 closed-back headphones, feature powerful 32-ohm drivers and comfortable ear pads in a durable metal construction, making them perfect for studio or portable use. The included plug-in enhances tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot at atomaudio.com. No, I think that's smart. I mean, when I started my most recent EP, I went into the studio with 5 songs, and I went ahead and hired my old intern, who's one of my favorite drummers, to come in and play drums. And I saw a girl who was playing bass in another funk band in town. It was like 10 people on stage, and I was like, she's the good one right there. She's the one who's playing her ass off, you know?
Yeah.
So I like reached out to her through Instagram and ended up doing what you're talking about, like hiring 2 people to come in and track with me.
Yep.
And it was such a great experience. I couldn't believe it. I mean, first of all, they were great players, so it was a lot of fun, but it was so productive.
Yeah.
It was so different than just going in with your friends where it's like, oh, are we about to record now, or are we doing another beer run, you know?
Right. And because like going it alone, it's not a good idea, because like you're your own worst enemy. You'll get in your own way. But if you have other people, there's a different dynamic that happens, because like, well, first of all, you got people in here, and especially if you're paying them, like you got to get something out of it, right? So you got to like prepare for it, and you got to make something. You want to walk away with something. But if you're by yourself, like it's so easy to get wrapped up in your negative self-talk and anxiety and like overanalyzing, being overly critical, instead of just like, all right, with the 3 of us are here, we're going to do the best we can, and then we're going to move forward and actually like figure it out from there, instead of like overanalyzing from the starting point.
Yeah, and another thing that in my experience I found helpful was, because I knew my own work schedule well, I was able to say, our session is from this hour to this hour on these days. You know, here's the budget. I know it's not much, but is that okay? And they said, yeah. So it's like everything was like clear. It was, again, I'm just remembering that, having that clarity, hiring people, they were there to make sure we got the songs done. We snuck in that 5th one just under the wire at the end. You know, it was challenging, but it was a great experience. So, you know, the other thing about collaborating too is just the reminder that you're describing the recording process, particularly the tracking process, as a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I collaborated on the tracking and then brought it back for me to finish. And I did get through my vocals, although I need to go back and revisit them. But I did find it was amazingly easy to fall right back into that hard drive on a collecting dust on the shelf phase, because I had put it all on myself to get it done again.
Right.
And sometimes the reverse is good for collaboration, where I'm obligated to the other people I'm working with to show up and get the work done that day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. That, like, just having people to do cool stuff with, I really can't encourage people to do that, like, more. Yeah. You know, I can't recommend it enough. I mean to say.
Well, and then the other aspect of that is just a reminder, like, of course it's collaboration, because in the end, if you want to go play a show, are you playing to an empty room full of people?
Right.
I mean, maybe you are if that's your vibe. But I mean, you know, there's always collaboration, and that's what makes it all so much fun. Music is really, it's just like it's a form of communication between humans.
Yeah. And so, like, the next songs, like, I'm collaborating with other people. Like, I have a different drummer and bass player that we're going to work with on a different song that I sort of dug up from. Actually, it's funny. Like, there was an old live recording of a band I was in that we recorded. We recorded some set at some show at some bar.
Was that The Long Wait?
Yeah, it was The Long Wait, and I was like, you know, I found it on Dropbox randomly one day, and I was like, oh, what's this? What's on here? And then I started listening to it, and I was like, ah. And then, like, some song started playing, and I was like, what song is this? And I had, like, completely just forgotten that I had written that song. And I was like, this song's good. This song is cool. I mean, like, I'd be down to. I mean,
who wrote that? Who is that guy? He sounds good.
Right. Well, not exactly like being like super egotistical about it, but I was like, man, this is actually like, how did I forget that I made this?
Yeah.
And then I texted my drummer at the time. And I was like, hey, do you remember playing this song? And like he came to me and was just like, dude, yes, that song is awesome. Do you want me to record it with you? Like,
nice.
Like 7-9 years later or something like that. And I was like, yeah, man, like I'd love to like resurface this or like get this out somehow. So that's what we're working on.
On the flip side, have you ever had any experience trying to collaborate with people when the others just aren't that into it?
Yeah, I mean,
and like, have you felt like the creative spirit just kind of start to die out with a band setting or anything, or heard other people describe that? And are there times where it's not worth rescuing? It's time to just move on and do a new thing?
Yeah, and I also think that like I've been that person that like hasn't had the energy for it, and they just move on without you. And at that point, it's like, you know, you did that to yourself. You should take the consequences, especially if you were just like, if you didn't write the song or whatever, and they just decided to move on without you, and that's fine. I don't remember. I don't have any real concrete examples. I mean, the long wait sort of did die because I got really tired of being in a memorial band. We were playing a lot of songs by our band member that had passed away.
Oh, all right.
And I don't think that I necessarily made the right decision. I do kind of regret it. I definitely do miss that band in a lot of ways. And it's funny.
I worked for Leonard Skinner.
and it's also funny to say because like basically like the song that's coming out next week is like half of the long wait and half of the band that I'm in now. You know, so like, but we broke up because I was sort of tired of that, and because it's just like the energy was different than what I wanted at the time. Looking back on it, I definitely would have done maybe things a little bit differently. But I've also been in like a touring band where I was just one of the instrumentalists, and I was definitely like not invited to the writing sessions, and I just got the feeling that like, oh, my input was not desired, and that was like an odd place to be, and like so no wonder that, you know, they moved on either without me or I just like kind of stopped caring about that band and whatever. You just don't jive with people. And I think that that's something to be aware of too, is like you can't force positive energy. Like a vibe kind of needs to happen organically, and you have to like each other, or work together in such a way. You don't necessarily have to like love each other and be best friends for you to be good collaborators, but there needs to be a certain well, this is an audio podcast. There needs to be resonant frequencies that you both share, that, you know, you need to resonate with each other, and in order to create something cool.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree that sometimes that process, just like creative, just like start writing a song so that you're already in the process of thinking about writing a song, so that when the inspiration does hit, you're ready to write. Sometimes looking for that inspiration with other people, it's that too. It's like, you know, get out of the house, go socialize, start a conversation to find out if there's that resonant energy. We just did a songwriting together with my oldest songwriting buddy and some new friends from Nashville. And, you know, we sketched a lot of song ideas quickly. Some of them might come back and be memorable. Some of them we'll hopefully never hear from again. But it was like inevitably, like the first one felt a little awkward to get out of the gate. And then once you get rolling, then all of a sudden some moments of inspiration happen.
Right.
And it's great to just go through that and get something going,
Totally.
Same thing with the studio and overdubs. When we record by ourselves, I find I just, need to get down there and just do it.
Yeah.
And then something happens, because there's a reason why we talk about this stuff, because we love making music. Right?
Yeah. And I'm relying pretty heavily on other people when I'm making my own songs, because I like working with other people, and I especially like finding people whose talent I trust and respect, and because it makes the song more fun for me, because I have this cool person on it, and I can talk about that. Which means that during promotion, I don't always have to talk about myself. You can talk about all the other players on the song and like gush over their performances, which is easy, right? Because then you're not feeling like egotistical and self-promotional when you're talking about somebody else's, performances and whatever. And a lot of times you also look at it from like a producer point of view. It's like, okay, I wrote this song. This is the basic bones. This is the song structure. I'm feeling this sort of arrangement. Let's find somebody who can do that. Instead of like, okay, let me learn how to play these complicated synth parts, or like program.
Let's just start with the obvious. Let me learn how to play the drums.
Exactly.
Why does my drumming not sound so good?
Right. Or program drums. Like that was the first thing. And and it was like the easiest way for me to make momentum on the song was to get a drummer and a bass player and go into the studio and record the bones, the foundation, because from there you can build. But like you're stuck in the studio, like programming drums, the easy drummer or like superior drummer or whatever, like kill me now. Like I hate that stuff. Even though I love that software and I love using it for sketching and stuff like that, but I'm just like not a beat maker. And I need help from people. And I think like realizing and understanding your limitations and knowing what you should do in order to like overcome them or circumvent them is a very good thing to be aware of for any creative. Is like, don't do like, if I'm in this position, I'm gonna hit my head against the wall. These are the solutions to that situation in order for me to move forward, and knowing that is valuable.
And I'm not going to encourage anybody not to have fun spending money on gear, because I actually think it's fun. It's totally fun. There's a reason why we do it, right? But I will follow that by saying the money that I might spend on some new instrument, of which I might already have quite a few in my studio, and that I look at and go like, oh, I need to spend more time working on this one.
Right.
Like to take that and just say, you know what, I'm just going to hire a drummer and a bass player for, one day or whatever, one session, and get in there and get myself really ready, really rehearse and get myself ready for it and track some new songs. That was way more productive that way. So it's good to hear you talk about that and just be reminded that that's, we have a lot of options for how we want to circulate what might be limited funds for us.
Yeah. And I think there's an example of like the indie musician mindset here that people need to maybe get out of and stop being stuck in, is that sort of like, oh, I don't have any money to make my record, but somehow you have all this gear and all these instruments on the wall. Like, I understand that if you, especially if you're young and don't have any money, and you should try to make the best art with the limitations that you can. That's a completely different economic situation. But I do not have sympathy in any way with the musicians that have like vintage guitars and high-end equipment and audio gear, and then complain about hiring audio engineers for $50 an hour or spending $100 on a session musician. Like, no sympathy for that. Like, that's just misplaced priorities from my end.
Elevate your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your creative vision to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, crafting deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with unique sound design, Complete 15 has got you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound even further. Then, polish off your mixes with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11, included in the Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Empirical Labs, creators of the iconic Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio professionals. The Fatso, or Full Analog Tape Simulator and Optimizer, brings the warmth of vintage tape and tube electronics to your digital recordings. Perfect for mixes, masters, or overdubs by adding harmonic generation, high-frequency saturation, tape emulation, and compression. The impressive new Pump, a 500 series classic knee compressor, shares its DNA with the analog Distressor and Arouser plugin. It features 8 selectable compression ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, a high-pass filter, and a first-time ever attack mod for added transient control, which is ideal for adding more snap to your snare drum. All Empirical Labs products are hand-assembled and tested right down to the circuit boards in northern New Jersey, USA for durability and performance, designed to last and be easily updated. Go to empiricallabs.com to find the Arouser and Big Freak plugins, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Remember to follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Björgvin Benediktsson, joining us from Tucson, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
B, are you ready to jam?
I am.
Does anybody else call you B for short, or just me?
No, lots of people.
Really? All
Yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
it's good to know I'm in a good crowd.
Yeah, for sure. No, a lot of my friends call me B.
Let's talk a little bit about so this aspect. It's great to talk about the creative stuff, getting it out there, working with other musicians, sort of like trying to supercharge the recording process.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that one of the issues that many of us run into is the feeling that it's quite done yet. You know, it's like, does it need to go back in the oven? Did you stick a toothpick in it? And a lot of the times for most of us, that means we just don't think our mix sounds good enough. Why don't we jump into that? Talk about some of the stuff that you chose to do to mix this song that's out now. So, and did we even mention the name of the song? I think you did. Sympathy.
Yeah, it's called Sympathy, yeah.
Yeah. So talk about your mixing strategy for Sympathy. Feel free to dive into some of the details, like what's the DAW you're using? I'm pretty sure it's probably Logic, right?
Yeah. So I use Logic. I have an extensive mix template. I even have a course on how to set up that mix template with, downloadable mix templates from multiple DAWs so that my students can sort of get easy results pretty fast. And so I use that, and I'm familiar with that, and I have most of the plugins and stuff already set up, so I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm going to do, and I know sort of in what order I'm going to be working on stuff.
Now, one of those plugins might just be a plugin that you had something to do with creating.
Yeah, so I also have my own plugin called the Audio Issues EQ, which helps people understand the frequency spectrum, kind of translates the complex frequency numbers into the vocabulary that we use today to describe frequencies. So like when you say something is muddy or boomy or harsh or thin or whatever, then
Boxy.
Yeah, boxy.
I like that you've got one called cheap.
Yeah, cheap. So I made that EQ so that it's easy to see where those frequencies are, because a newbie or a musician that maybe isn't completely well versed in exactly how frequencies work might just not know where those frequencies are. So they might think something is boxy, but they'll waste a bunch of time looking for stuff in the high frequencies because they just simply don't understand how it works. So I label the frequency spectrum according to how we teach the frequency language, and so that it's easy for people to get results fast with their EQ.
Now, the terms, so there's Rockstars, there's words like sub, thump, boom, mud, sibilant, piercing, harsh.
Yeah.
So there's negative terms and there's I assume positive terms, right?
Right.
Also.
Yeah, so it's a dual module EQ. So it's a visual equalizer on top, which the thought process is that that's where you find the negative frequencies that you don't want, and you cut that so that you sort of like sculpt and take out the stuff that you don't like. And then I have a boost only vintage analog style EQ on the bottom that is labeled, thump, weight, attitude, presence, clarity, stuff like that. Where if you want to add something like that, or if a track you think needs more clarity or more presence, then it's just a matter of boosting or like pulling a knob, pushing a knob, turning a knob, I guess. It's what you do with a knob. And it'll add that frequency we are sort of like generally accepted to be that frequency. Like the vocabulary I use is sort of like the generally accepted frequency language for those particular frequencies.
Yeah. Now, that's a cool way of thinking about it. Do you find that one of your mixing strategies has been one where you try and start by identifying something that's not working in a sound? So like, it's funny because we think of equalization and where did this stuff come from? And it's like, I think when it was, originally created, I think it really was meant to be thought of as like corrective EQ. It's like you're trying to correct for things that didn't happen correctly in the microphone, But like, do you like to start by cutting frequencies in the graphic thing before you even move down to the boost stuff, or do you find that you just sort of do a little bit of all of it at the same time?
I tend to do subtractive EQ for certainly filtering out stuff that doesn't need to be there for sure. And then if there is stuff that needs to get taken out, like, for drums, the main thing are like, is it too boxy? Does it need to be cut between 300 and 400? Usually that rounds out the tone of the drums, so like it's almost kind of a go-to to like, even if you recorded it the best way possible, an EQ is still going to make it sound slightly better by taking those things out. And then I'll boost obviously too, but then you get into this relationship between like the EQ and the compressor, right? So like, do you boost a bunch and then you put a compressor after that's negating all those boosts? And so you have to be thinking about it that way of like, I was finishing up a mix walkthrough video this morning and I was talking about like mixing, like I am showing them how the track was mixed, like in like, it's like this plugin and this plugin and this plugin, as if it's linear, but it's not. Like, that's not how, I don't think that's how, well, it's certainly not how I mix. I don't think that's how mixing works overall. Like, you might start in a linear fashion, but then it all becomes a balancing relationship act between plugins and tracks. So sometimes I'm like, I put an EQ on, and then I put a compressor on, and then the compressor is increasing or is changing the tone so that now I hear frequencies that I didn't beforehand. And so I have options, and I can put an EQ after the compressor and then take stuff out, or I can listen to the compressed signal while I am EQing the incoming signal before compression, right? So
right, because the signal hitting the compressor causes the compressor to do things, and by more carefully controlling the signal with EQ going into the compression, it can help carefully cause the compressor to do different stuff. There's also that the sort of like the end run version of side chaining compression too, where you're like kind of creating a nasty sound going into the side chain of the compressor,
right,
that you don't even hear, but it causes the compressor to compress more on those particular frequencies and stuff like that.
right. Yeah, because
the Distressor's got that feature like that with the where you can kind of mid-range. I think it's got the mid-range button that kind of will accentuate that going into the detection circuit.
Got it. Yeah. Because like it's all a matter of like, like how things react, and the more stuff you put on the, more plugins you put on the tracks, the more routing you add, the more effects returns there are. The relationship between all those tracks becomes maybe more delicate, at which point you sort of need to be more careful about massaging things into place.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in Logic. What do I want to ask you next about the mixing part? Well, you mentioned the balancing act, and what was funny and popped into my mind was I just was working on a mix yesterday, and it was a live session, and I got it into a good place. But by the end of, I spent a full day working on it because I had to. I wasn't in a position to take the wise advice of separating the preparation from the mixing. So I had to get it all done in one sitting.
Yeah.
And by the time the day was over, I was deep into second guessing myself, and I take it to the car and I'm like, the guitars aren't loud enough. So I go back it down and I'm like, raise the guitars a dB, raise them another one, put wideners on them.
Yeah.
Thinking I'm getting it. And then later at the end, I go back and listen. It's like, the first mix I did sounded better. And it's just that it was that reminder to me of how critical the balancing act is. And sometimes even just trying to remove yourself in one moment from the listening part of the balancing act, where you're just like, the bass isn't loud enough. I'm just going to go down there and just boost the bass one more. And then you go listen to it later. You're like, but that sucks. Why does that not work?
Yeah, right.
It's because it's that you always have to have your ears tuned in and be judging everything against everything else.
Right. Totally. Because it's going to change. Because like that, pushing that bass up may, especially like if you have mix bus compression on, that it's going to change that relationship with the mix bus compression, and that compressor is compressing everything, therefore changing the relationship between every single other track, right?
Yeah.
It's so much like programming sometimes, of like you have to, like there's amazing creative aspect of mixing where you're shaping stuff and you're adding kind of like these colors and spaces and this like, making things like, punch you in the face sort of thing. But at the end of the day, also you really just have to understand the audio engineering, like what actually is happening.
Right, because it helps understand why it's not working.
Right. Oh, yeah. Especially when it comes time to troubleshoot. Like, why isn't it working? What's going on? What's happening? It's like, oh, it's because this is reacting adversely to this other track, which accidentally was left on or something like that. Right.
Yeah. Well, and my mixing templates got pretty complex these days. I like it, but sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, all right, Lidge, next stage is to figure out how to make this simple again,
Right.
And so, especially when you're importing mix templates from previous songs too, and then you had some tricky routing thing and you're like, why am I still hearing reverb? Everything's off. And then you look and you're like, oh, because I put like a reverb send on the master output and added more reverb to the whole thing.
Right.
Well, so it's cool to hear. Yeah. So again, like trying to get it all balanced so it punches you in the face, even for a song like Sympathy that you're putting out.
Well, I mean, like that's more about, it's trying to like, add to the emotion, right? Songs are like inherently like about something emotional, whether that is get out and dance on the dance floor, or, sit and sulk about your broken heart or whatever. But like, I think that what you do with the tools and the plugins and the EQs and the compressors should serve the song and should be like, should be used to evoke the emotion that song is supposed to evoke, and it's supposed to like add to it and enhance that stuff, right? So like I mixed another song for a student from custom mix walkthrough that's like sort of like, I think he called it Sunny Drive Pop. So it's like, like upbeat, super upbeat, real like fun vocals, like guitars, all this stuff, like kind of hard hitting and driving, and definitely like different aspects of parallel compression, different vocal processing, and all that. Obviously, than a ballad, and it all designed to serve the energy of the song.
Yeah. Now, with that said, are there some pretty common? I feel like some of this is like you set up your mix template and how you're going to mix with some basic fundamental things that may or may not work, or may just be the color palette that you're trying to coax the energy out of the mix from. So what are some of the things that you find, like maybe in the Sympathy track or in a typical mix for yourself? What are some basic elements that you would always set up if you want to jump into that and talk about that?
Yeah, so I could talk about sort of like the general buses that I and effects that I always used to usually use, but I also want to talk about the finalization process of like knowing when things are done.
Yeah, that's my next question. Is highlighted right there. I'm hitting you with it if you didn't go there already.
Right. So let's talk about like things that I usually add, and it's variations of parallel compression or parallel processing. And I think that a lot of my students, like their world gets more colorful when they learn how to use parallel processing, because it's just not just for adding reverb and delay. It's for adding, parallel EQ that's saturated in the mids only so that the bass can cut through on the small speakers. Like that's sort of detailed, like drum compression that's completely like smashed, but inaudible except for just making the drums creamier, right? That's the typical parallel compression on drums, of course. But then there's like the back bus techniques, the Brauerizing methods, all of these sorts of like parallel compressing the overall mix, which I think adds a sense of fullness, depth, and power to any mix, to any sort of any genre almost. And like I use a combination of like two buses, and it's like an FET compressor, usually an 1176, and an LA two-way. And I put all of my all of my instrument tracks all go to that, and just a little bit, and just compressing a tiny bit, and then I blend that into the rest of the mix. And it doesn't add any weird things, and doesn't add any it doesn't add any muddiness or anything like that. What it does add is it creates a thicker foundation of the mix, and it makes things louder without squashing the top. I like to talk about it. I like to explain it that you're adding volume from the middle of the waveform out.
Middle out compression from Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. It's middle out compression for sure. In a different way, of course, because like as you know, like when you use a limiter, you're chopping off the peaks, right? And that's not great. But it's okay to have less dynamic range as long as you're not destroying all the transients, right?
Right. So let's reiterate that. So when we try and make our music sound louder, because sometimes we hear it and we're like, then we listen to something else and we're like, why does the other thing sound so much bigger? Sometimes we just push everything into the limiter more, but that's, like you said, it's chopping off all the transient things that we do want in order to make the middle more inflated and bigger. And you're saying when we start exploring things like backbus compression parallel, which is taking a lot of our elements in the mix and sending them to a parallel compression track and then blending that back in, we have not chopped off the peaks of our mix. We've just sort of simply inflated the middle a little more.
Yeah. You're creating thickness in that way. You're adding more to the overall body of the track is maybe a way to explain it. And there's less dynamic range, which means there's less volume between the top of the peaks and the what's it called, a trough or whatever.
Trough.
Trough. Yeah. And so it's like the top of the waveform and the exactly. And the bottom of the waveform, there's just not enough, there's less range there. There's less volume difference, right? Obviously, if there's no volume difference, it's just completely squashed, right?
Right.
But I think that there is a way to make a song powerful and loud without killing the dynamic range and without killing the transient peaks. And I think that's what makes it louder.
Let's break down backbus compression a little bit, because I think it's a great trick. It's a great mixing tool. I remember learning about it from Andrew Sheps explaining it once, and I was like, wow, that's a cool idea. When I do it, I think I don't include the drums. My thinking was
it has its own parallel compressor.
Yeah, the drums are already doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's a question of let's make sure all the rest of the music feels full, as full as it can.
Yep.
And so what it would be taking all the other sounds in the mix, feeding them to a stereo aux track, putting on, I think I did it with an 1176, the Chrysler Algae one, but it sounds like maybe you've come up with a clever way to do an 1176 style and maybe an LA2A, so it's like a combination.
Yeah.
And then when I did it, I would tuck it. I'd get the needle bouncing a bit in there, not too crazy necessarily, but bouncing a bit. And actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I have to give to Graham Cochran, I have to give credit. I think I actually first learned about it from Graham sharing what he had learned from Andrew.
Sure.
But then I'll tuck that. Then the next question that you struggle with when you're mixing this stuff is like, well, how loud is it supposed to be? You know? And I think what I found really useful was tuck it in there as low as you can get away with until you're muting and unmuting the track and you're like, ooh, that does a nice thing.
Totally. Yeah. So
does that sound about right for you?
Yeah, because like those I usually start with the faders of those buses down, and then I just like hit unity gain on all the sends of the tracks, and this is one and there's
post fader unity gain, so that as you change your mix, it changes what's being sent there.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
And then and there's even a slight nuance to adding maybe a little more of the vocals than anything else, because if the vocal is the loudest part of the mix and it's hitting that compressor, the compressor is actually, reducing the gain slightly, which gives the relative impression that the instruments maybe duck slightly, making it so that the vocal is clearer overall. So that's like an advanced version of an already pretty advanced technique, right? Which I don't necessarily always do and whatever. And then it depends on a lot of like what the incoming signal is and stuff like that. But
yeah, and that has the added effect of as soon as the vocal stops singing, now the music sort of fills the swimming pool back up again.
Yeah, and you don't obviously
cool
don't want it to be like unnatural. You don't want it to all of it like swell, but you also do want to. But it might create the movement of power that you want.
Right, the movement of power.
Yeah, and so like so I put those and they're usually like the volume's all the way down, and then I'll just increase the volume a little bit until it starts filling up the mix, and then I'll increase both of them, and then they're usually like they're not usually not the same level, but I'll it's just a matter of taste.
When you say both of them, you mean the 1176 and the LA2A?
They're separate buses.
Oh, so they're on separate tracks. Okay, cool. Not serial. Not.
No, it's not serial. No. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, dig it. That's great.
And so that, and then if I mute it and the bottom falls out of the barrel, right? Then I know that like it's actually making it sound good.
Yeah.
Did you know that one of the most common fears with audio mastering is not knowing if your mix is ready or not? Look, nobody wants to send a mix in for mastering only to realize there's some resonating low end that's going on that wasn't picked up in the mix. That's where I come in. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. As soon as you send a mix for me to listen to, I'm already on your team. Mix feedback and master readiness is a service I offer for free and for good reason. That's because a great mix produces an even greater master. So if I can help you minimize oddities and issues and even provide some advice that will help your mix translate better, then mastering becomes more efficient and effective. And you don't stress about those issues at all. Just go to soundporter.com. There you can find videos, a FAQ, and a pre-mastering checklist on my website that will explain a lot of what you need to know. When you're ready for great feedback, just reach out via my low-friction contact form and send me a mix to hear. Again, you can find me at soundporter.com.
Are you sick of searching for the right cable only to realize it doesn't even exist? Or maybe you're asking yourself, how in the world do I hook my studio up? Well, say goodbye to those headaches, because Trace Audio can get you wired up right. Based in Nashville, but serving studios nationwide and around the world, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, labels, and wiring solutions. From labeling your patch bay to wiring your full studio or large format console, Trace Audio does it all, whether you're a home or pro studio owner. And the real game changer is Trace Audio's custom patch bay label designer. It's a one-stop tool to color code, organize, and design labels for your 1/4-inch or XLR patch bays. No more wondering where things are on your patch bay, when instead you can have sleek, professional labels that are easy to read and easy to use. Try the free online patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com and use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom labels and take your studio to the next level. Okay, so that's a cool trick to try, Rockstars. I know if you haven't already tried that, you're likely thinking, as soon as I hit the studio, I'm going to try this out. Do you have, if somebody runs into, I think I got it, but I'm not sure, I want to check it against what Björgvin was talking about. Do you have that available anywhere else where you really break it down?
Yeah, I think there's a YouTube video on my channel called something like My Secret Weapon for Louder Mixes, which is not clickbait. It actually just goes into detail on how it works. I mean, it might be like a variation of what we're talking about. Things of, like the way you approach these things changes a little bit over the years, but I think that, maybe I was using three buses at that time or whatever. But yeah, check that out. That video should explain it in detail.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll find that link and include it in the show notes, Rockstars.
Totally.
All right. So then, what about the master bus? What's stuff that you find useful on your master? And if people are going through the inevitable question that we all go through, which is, what happens at mastering? And am I supposed to make it sound one way, but it'll sound different after mastering? And then, you're like, like I can't tell you the number of times I was like, I wish I could just hear, my favorite record X before it was mastered, so I was mixing to make it sound like that,
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on stuff to do with the master bus, and then what mastering brings after you've mixed it?
Yeah, and what mastering is really.
What is mastering really?
Yeah.
We said 2 hours after we just talked with Ian Shepherd.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. A recent guest of yours, Stephen Lee Tracy, he was on your show, and he talked about, I talked about him. I went to his birthday party, actually, and we started, nerding out about this stuff. And he said, like, yeah, it's kind of like, when I send stuff over, or like I have a mastering engineer that I work with, and he kind of calls it mixtering now. Because it's like, we have all these tools available, and a lot of like musicians are just like doing it on their own, or the mixing engineer just wants it to sound as mastered as possible, because they don't want to send anything for approval unless it sounds like a record, right? So what the mastering engineer ends up getting is like, oh, like, thanks for thinking of me. Like, I'll add a limiter to it, I guess, or whatever. But like on my mix bus, I usually just have 3 things or so, which is a saturation of some sort, things that has changed over the years. I'm currently playing around with the black box. I really like that one, but I've used Saturn a lot too. And then I have a mix bus compressor, usually a VCA style, which is like the typical SSL transparent compressor, compressing mildly.
So do you find do you think about the black box as the first happening before it hits the compressor?
Yeah, I think, and as far as I understand it, maybe I'm just making this up, but saturation adds harmonics, I think, is the generally accepted to be true. And so I want to create those harmonics so that the compressor has the full range of harmonic detail to work with, or to like to listen to. Because I don't want to like compress it and then I'm going to add a bunch of harmonics that, it's a matter of preference. I'm sure it works either way, right?
Right. That's the beauty about working with plugins, especially if you're in Logic. You just scoot the plugin in front of it or behind it and see what it sounds like, see what you think.
Totally. And then I actually use the Pultec kick drum technique on the mix bus sometimes, which is, you boost and cut at 60 or 100 hertz.
Yeah.
Because of the way that trick works, it's actually, it's a shelving boost, but it's a parametric cut. And so if you were to go into a visual EQ and just so it's easy to see, and I did this in a mix walkthrough this morning, so it's fresh in my head, is like, if you want to see what the Pultec trick actually does, go put a shelving EQ, 10 dB at 100 hertz, for instance, and then put another EQ band in parametric and put it at 100 hertz and do minus 10 dB, and just see how the curve changes. So it's not going to be a true shelf, and it's not going to be a true bell, because the way those two curves interact, it creates this shelf in the lows. But the way a shelf works is that, it goes down by some bandwidth after the frequency that you select. So like, if you boost 10 dB at 100 hertz, things are being boosted by that shelf at 105, 110, all the way up to 200 hertz if you have the curve gentle enough, or the slope is gentle enough. Now, if you just do that, you might be adding some muddiness between 100 and 200 hertz because you're boosting with a shelf at 100 hertz, right? Now, with the Pultec technique, a trick is, if you put a parametric cut at 100 hertz, it's actually going to cut and negate that shelf that's above 100 hertz, cleaning the low mids while adding a bass boost.
A little like the Audio Issues EQ.
Yeah, I mean it's basically modeled very similarly in that sense. You can actually the boost module at the bottom is both shelving or parametric depending on the focus knob.
Yeah. The nice thing about graphic EQs like the one you designed too is you can see those curves on the screen to sort of see what the EQ is doing.
Yeah, the visual
when
EQs.
we use Pultex, we sort of have to listen for things.
Right.
But there are tricks. So you're describing if you put did you say if you put 100 hertz tone through it and then do that? Or or you put like noise through it?
No, I'm just like, if people are interested in knowing exactly why that trick works, it's easiest to see what the curve is by basically emulating it with a visual EQ. So a 10 dB boost at 100 hertz with a shelf and a 10 dB cut at 100 hertz with a parametric bell, and then you'll see the curve, and I think it'll be clear.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. All right, dig it. Then what about the mixtering as far as like limiting on a mix bus and that sort of thing? Is that something that you find a useful practice? Do you live in both worlds where you're printing with and without? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
When I was like working on finishing the mix and doing like the car test and listening to it on earbuds and stuff like that, honestly, I just used the mastering assistant in Logic to get it up to competitive levels. And it's pretty good. Like it's very convincing in what it does.
Yeah, that's great. Why don't you break that down for people? Maybe they're using Logic and they just haven't explored it yet. Or maybe it's somebody who's like, I guess maybe I should check out Logic too.
Yeah, the mastering assistant is brand new in the newest update. And it's, similar to the Ozone mastering assistant and all these AI tools, right? It analyzes your frequency curve and applies some frequency curve and probably some compression and all that, and limiting, in order to get it up to a specific loudness standard for streaming or whatnot. And it actually like very heavily analyzes your track. So the mastering assistant in Ozone, you hit the button and it listens to your track for 5 seconds or whatever, and then applies a curve and applies compression or whatever. The mastering assistant listens to your entire track and analyzes it. So it like kind of takes not the length of the track, but can often take like 30 seconds to a minute. So you're kind of waiting for it. And you don't necessarily get to see what the compression is doing. You do get to see the EQ curve, so you can like tweak the EQ curve if you don't like it. There's characters. There's like, you can choose transparency, you can choose punch, clean, which is probably like what kind of modeling is under the hood there. And then you can choose how loud, like the loudness you want it, how loud you want it. And I use a lot of the meter plug stuff from me and Shepherd. And so I have Dynameter, I have the loudness penalty plugin, and I use Voxengo Span for my frequency analyzer. And so I cross-reference what the mastering assistant is doing to those meters to see like, oh, is it up to snuff when it comes to like dynamics and loudness? Is it going to get turned down? Is the frequency balance like accurate? And then obviously, does it sound good just listening to it? And at that point, like I might tweak that stuff or whatever, but then I'll bounce it out if I want to listen to it as a quote unquote mastered thing. But for this record that I did for myself, I actually wanted a second set of ears, so I just got Ian to master it for me. So nice. he mastered it for me. I sent him like the Logic mastered version. I was like, well, here's the mastered version from Logic, which sounds decent to me, just so that you can have a ballpark of what it. And then I obviously sent him the unmastered stuff and whatnot. And so that brings us kind of to like how do you know when things are done? Is like one of the benefits of working with a mastering engineer is like, hopefully they want to be able to put their names on your song, and if they have if they have respect for themselves and at least, a normal sized ego, they would tell you if there's something wrong with your mix, because they want to have a credit on it, or they don't want to, obviously you don't want to feel like uncomfortable if somebody tells the world that you worked on something and you don't think it sounds good. And I think that like having somebody else work on it where their sort of name is on the line is a good way of getting honest feedback, especially from professionals. And then, if you have peers, like I ran a membership for years where the biggest part was Feedback Friday, where people would come in, we'd do a big Zoom call, we'd listen to everybody's mixes, I'd give them feedback, I'd show them and give them tips and tricks on how to improve their mixes and whatnot. And that's like a very, very important part of getting better, is getting peer feedback, which means feedback from people who actually are trained at listening to music, know what they're listening for, and can give you constructive feedback that's practical, instead of like, oh, it sounds great. That's not helpful.
Right.
But if you listen to it, like, because I would listen to it and I would import the mixes, which were usually mastered in some way, whether it's through a limiter or whatever, and I would listen to it normally, but I would also listen to it and reference the meters and stuff. And I would be like, well, there doesn't seem to be a lot of high end. So I boosted the high end here and actually brought out a lot of stuff in these instruments. So maybe revisit the mix and add some high end there, or bring that up, or add some extra presence there. Don't do it in the mastering phase. Go back and revisit the mix. Or the song isn't loud enough. But because I used to have just like the WAV files of the mix or the unmastered mix or whatever, and then I'd do a quick dirty mastering job, and I'd be like, because once you add a little bit of compression, multiband compression, some limiting, and you increase the volume of a song, some stuff will pop out at you. Like a frequency range will be like, oh, you got to take care of that hi-hat now. Or like, oh, now like the kick drum is like really like boomy. Like you got to take care of that. Like you don't want that to be something that the mastering engineer has to do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember early on sending mixes out for mastering, and I was still struggling with trying to figure out how to get a mix that I liked in the first place. And also in that place where I thought, oh, the secret is that the mastering will make it do all the stuff I wish I had done in the mix.
Yeah, no.
Which is not really the way to approach it.
Right.
But but sometimes, the boosted high end, I'd notice, oh gosh, the tambourine doesn't sound any good anymore.
Right.
Which probably just didn't do the tambourine right in the first place on my end. But, you're right. Mastering, adding lots more compression, all that stuff, it can really accentuate stuff that was hidden in the song before, hidden in the mix, because masking. I mean, it's basic audio stuff. Frequencies get masked by other frequencies, and when you change that relationship, they're now unmasked.
Right.
Like Zorro.
Right.
All right, so let's jump forward with some having talked about some of these cool tips for the mixing and for the mastering understanding. And let's say when you've got all those things under your belt, you got a basic understanding, you're still faced with one of the most common challenges that people describe, which is knowing when you're finished.
Right.
Just when is this thing done?
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to getting peer review or getting peer feedback, and maybe working with somebody that will give you honest feedback and will help you take it to the final level. Like, I don't think what are mastering rates, like $50 to $100. I just don't think that's that much money to like get like a clear set of ears that has objective feedback with the goal of creating quality. Like that is worth $50 for sure, $100 even, right?
And I know everybody's got a different perspective on money, but I'm just thinking about that as we're talking about it. And Rockstars, if you're listening to this podcast, that probably indicates that you have a computer or cell phone or a car.
Yeah.
Most likely a car.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Right. But like knowing when you're finished is, the joke is, or like the cliche is like a mix is never finished. It's abandoned or whatever. Because like at the end of the day, it's also a matter of like, you just have to decide that you want it out.
Yeah.
And like, do you like how it sounds? Does it sound good everywhere? Does it translate? Do people like it? Have you shown it to, like it's very important to get peer feedback because it gives you clear feedback from a technical standpoint. But you also want to ask people like, hey, does this song like do something for you? Like, does it move you? Like, do you think it's cool? Because like the amateur ears are fine and are important for a different reason, right? And then at that point, it's a matter of just like releasing it. And I think a lot of people know when it's done, they just don't want to start the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to like, all right, now I have to make sure that this is going to be something that I want to live with forever. And now I have to figure out, what's the album cover going to be like? How do I release it? Do I use CD Baby or DistroKid or whatever, all of the other distribution channels? How do I release it? Oh, do I need a social media presence? Who's ever going to listen to this? Like, I better just, quit while I'm here because like this feels overwhelming. And it goes back to the first thing that we talked about, new level, new devil, is like a lot of stuff. There's the fear of failure, but there's also the fear of success.
Right.
Of like, well, now that I've gotten to this level, I have to deal with all this stuff, right? Because it's fun to tinker with your song. It's fun to like tweak stuff and like, hear it in a different way. But it might not be as fun to do the marketing and promotion and then start from scratch on a new song.
Atom Audio is proud to announce the new D3V active desktop monitor system and H200 dynamic closeback studio headphones designed in Berlin and perfect for pro-level monitoring in a home studio setting. The D3V is a fully active desktop monitoring system featuring 3.5-inch woofers and hand-folded ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact form in elegant white or black finish. It's perfect for songwriters, producers, podcasters, and mixers with digital input over USB-C or balanced analog inputs and includes a headphone output and DSP room acoustic switches. The H200 is Atom Audio's new closed-back studio headphone featuring 40mm peak drivers and memory foam ear pads in a durable metal construction with a detachable main cable for dual-sided connectivity, making the H200s reliable for demanding studio use. With an impedance of just 32 ohms, they will sound great with your studio or laptop and include a plug-in for enhanced tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot. To see the new D3V monitors and H200 headphones, go to atomaudio.com. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks or mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music and EQ curve, referencing a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma Ozone RX or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. Well, there's the comfort zone factor. We all have our comfort zones in everything we do. And it's easy to fall back into that. And sometimes it's the right place to be, but other times it's time to break out of the comfort zone. And guess what? It's going to be uncomfortable.
Right. And that's actually one of the things that I've sort of like gotten, no pun intended, more comfortable with over the years since, especially in the last couple of years after becoming a father, because once you become a dad, you definitely don't take certain things as seriously. I totally understand the appeal of dad jokes now, and like being comfortable, being not awkward, but like making other people feel awkward. Like I will lean heavily into making once my daughter is a teenager, I will lean heavily into embarrassing her for sure. I cannot wait.
Which is the bad dad jokes.
Yeah. So like, and like uncomfortable silences, like I thrive on uncomfortable silences. I teach university classes in entrepreneurship, and sometimes there's uncomfortable silences because like when you ask a question and you don't call on a student, nobody really wants to answer. Because they have to take the initiative to answer. And when you're like a 21-year-old college student, you'd rather just like not. And so I let the uncomfortable silence hang for a while in class because like it doesn't matter to me. I'm not uncomfortable in an uncomfortable silence.
Right.
I don't. There's
a lot of power in silence and letting silence exist and take up space. It's funny that you use it in that context because that goes right back to the beginning of making music.
Right. Oh,
letting
yeah.
Silence exist in lyric writing, letting silence exist in parts in a song, letting silence exist in a mix.
Yeah. But going back to why we mentioned that is like, you kind of have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And you have to realize that if you want it out, you're the only person that has that power, and nobody's going to care about it as much as you do. And if you don't care about it enough to release it, nobody's going to care about it.
Well, there's that concept of stop waiting for permission.
Yeah.
But really, we are waiting for permission, and we do need permission. It's just we're the only ones who have to give it. We just have to give permission to ourselves to do whatever it is that we want to do.
Right.
And go do it.
Yeah. And it's very liberating to be able to think, I mean, I don't give a fuck what other people think. Like, I'm going to put this out. If you don't like it, I don't care. Like, it's not for everyone. You go to Amazon, go to the best-selling books of all time and look through the 1-star reviews. I have a review. I've sold 40,000 some copies of Step-by-Step Mixing, which is a lot for a niche book like that, for sure. Obviously not no like big, checks coming from that, or no like book awards from that, but like a significant amount of sales, right?
Yeah.
And I still have 4+ stars, over 1,000 ratings on Amazon. And I have a 1-star review where he complains that the book has too many words in it. Like, what am I supposed to live my life that way of like, oh, I'm afraid that somebody's going to like give me a 1-star review like that? Like, why does that matter? It should not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and getting out there, let's take the music to the next stage too, because it's all related. So let's say we've gotten past this. We've now released our music, or let's go to the release process. Let's talk about things that you think are smart, or whatever you're going to practice next on how to release a song. So for example, there's a blog post here on audio issues, your website, under your page. And it takes an old Pueblo to put a band together. And it's a post about the upcoming song.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, of course, a variety of ways to promote and release music and put it out there. So maybe talk about what you've decided to do. And if you think of any stories that you've heard of other people doing something that, you remembered or struck you, share those too.
Yeah. So what I do is I just tend to weave the fact that I'm coming out with a song into my daily storytelling, writing emails to my audience, right?
Because that's what
your
I do. World.
Right. So I write not necessarily daily, but like I try to email my list almost every day with some anecdote, with some like silly story. I think of it as like, almost like a stand-up routine. I'm trying to write like a series of jokes, so that if somebody opens an email from me, they get like a slice of life where I don't take myself too seriously, make a joke, usually at my own expense, add in an analogy of how that relates to some audio or music production technique or thing to inspire them to go do their own thing. And then at the bottom of an email, I usually have a link to one of my products if they want to work with me or learn from me more. So that's like my basic marketing and sales strategy that I've used for probably over a decade now, right? And so the fact that I have a song coming out is just you can think of it as a product, like what do I want them to do to consume this thing that I'm making, this creative product. And so I have to tell people about it, right? So like I've been trying to create some quote unquote pre-buzz of like just talking about the production process, what I'm doing, how the song is coming together, releasing the artwork, showing showing various aspects of the song, trying to tell a story and weave a story into it. Hopefully being interesting enough to my audience so that they are inspired to make their own music, right? And then I'm making a mix tutorial on what I did inside the mix to make it sound the way it sounds. So if you like how it sounds, you can get the mix tutorial. So like how I release it is like, because music is free, whether you like it or not, music is free. I'm going to release it on Bandcamp. I'm going to release it on Spotify, everywhere, so you can listen to it for free. But since my audience are home studio musicians, bedroom producers that like to know more about mixing, I'm also putting together a package of the multi-tracks and the mix walkthrough for like a nominal fee. So that if you want to support the song, if you like the song, you want to know how it sounds, if you like how it sounds and want to know why it sounds the way it sounds, you can get the mix walkthrough. So that's just like another way of monetizing your music career that I do and I've done for a very long time.
So that, and I have done and will do something similar for my music because I've got a podcast and I reach lots of people that way, and it makes sense to connect those dots. Now, not everybody's got that, and I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think Rockstars were sharing this because the story is everybody needs to start blogging, start a YouTube channel, and start a podcast. Some of you definitely do, and you know who you are. But those who are like, do I really have to do that thing? There's there's the other aspects, like there's the social media, but there's also like, sometimes it's just going around and telling everybody in your world that you're doing a thing, you're doing your music, you're putting it out. And have you heard stories from your audience talking about some of the ways they've done that? And if not, we could just make some up.
Well, and you mentioned like who does cool stuff when it comes to releasing. I think that there's two personalities online that I really dig the way that they release music, and it's Nick D and Connor Price. Connor Price is I guess he started as a child actor, but then now he's a musician. He makes really, really cool songs, blends sort of like hip hop and rap beats and stuff like that. But also he has some more melodic stuff as well. But the way he makes his content, or makes his like splash and promotes his stuff, is through like pretty well produced reels or TikToks, where you've seen the type of reel where like the same person plays two different characters in a sketch. One comes into the room, and so he plays both the artist and the producer, and they use their songs, or they like and make sort of almost a comedy sketch that then features the song. And I think it's a genius way of promoting your music, because a lot of people think of content as a drudgery, as like, oh, I have to make all this content for this stuff that I actually want to talk about.
Right.
But I think of content as just another creative outlet. Like, I actually, not all the time, I've written too many emails to tell you that like every single one of them was a joy to write. But like when I get into the groove, when I actually like am cracking myself up and I'm like, oh, this is good. Like, this is funny. And I really hope that they also think it's funny and laugh at it. But like, that's fun for me. Like, that's just a different outlet. Like, I am actually probably predominantly just a straight standard writer. Not like a musician, songwriter, whatever. Like, I like just words on a page, and like, and writing like quick one-liners, quick posts like that, quick little essays. And that's a great creative outlet for me. So if you have a piece of work, piece of art, and whether that's music or something else, I would try to find a medium that makes you as creative, and like put it and use that medium to promote what you have, right? Like, I don't know how many people are on Instagram who are like graphic artists or comic strip artists or whatnot, and they put their comic strips on Instagram, and like they're just using Instagram to promote what they already would like to do, right? So how do you promote what you're already doing in maybe a slightly different medium?
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak or distant or lack punch or clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins and Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you're using. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can use the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. For 15 years, I owned a famous MCI console that came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made many Grammy-winning records in the 1970s, and it sounded amazing. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to full digital mixing, I decided to team up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. This isn't just another boring plugin. The MBSI captures that same iconic sound that was used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, produced by Bill Simzik, Saturday Night Fever and Stayin' Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, and was loved by legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik. to name just a few. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a high and low pass filter switch. Features I always wished that the console had. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio, just like me. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound. Go to makebelievestudio.com/MBSI. Well, so then the other part of the equation is when you begin. So Rockstars, Björgvin's got, he's been doing this longer than I have. So you've built up a network of an audience through audio issues. I now have a network through this podcast that I can reach people. But when I started it, I didn't have that. A network of people I just knew. But I specifically remember launching this podcast and just saying, I heard somewhere that I should write down 100 names of people that I know,
right,
on a list. And I made a spreadsheet and I put their emails on there and I put their phone numbers on there and I methodically went through and contacted everybody and started there, just started from scratch. And so I feel like that is a good reminder to us in putting music out too. If you feel like you don't have that kind of connection, or you feel like social media is a black hole, which it can feel like sometimes at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just make a manual list of people you know. Don't be afraid to email people or call them or text them, until they tell you to stop. I had somebody who still likes me tell me to stop sending me emails.
So social media is giant, right? Because the internet's like the sixth continent of the world in that sort of sense.
Right.
And it's just a giant black hole, like you said. And I don't think you should neglect the local scene that you have, right? So just in town, I could go to a show, I could meet up with musicians immediately if I wanted to. And even if I didn't know the musicians, I would go to a show if I liked them. I would, you can start a conversation with them. So, who knows where that's going to go? Two stories on both how I got into the music scene and how I got into the audio engineering scene in Tucson as a new person 10 years ago is I had a guitar, I had an acoustic guitar and some songs, and I needed to perform them. Nobody would hire nobody, so I had to go to open mics, right? Open mics aren't the most fun thing to do. I do realize that, but if that's all you got, that's all you got. You got to start there, right? And so that's where I met Liz and Alan at the beginning. That became The Long Wait, right? Because they were also performing at the open mic, and then we struck up a conversation and we emailed and then we started performing together, right? That's a very standard, and I think that's probably possible for anybody. That.
Do you remember your first open mic performance? Do you remember the first time you sang a song on a mic like that?
No, not quite. I remember the first time I played on stage in Tucson. But I had played as a singer-songwriter just at parties in Spain.
Okay.
And so, but the first time on stage in Tucson, that was interesting. I was just by myself, right? But I think that as long as you're not deathly afraid and shy of other people, then you should be able to do that. And then the way I got into having a little bit of a name as an audio engineer in town. Obviously, Audio Issues is a separate thing that was promoted and has built itself over time, right? And having had that when I went out into the scene in Tucson was a strength, right? I could be hi, my name is Björgvin. I run this site. And if you go to it, there's it's adds a layer of credibility to yourself, right? But what I did was I went to the local community radio station and asked if I could volunteer as an engineer.
Nice.
Or if there were any opportunities for helping out in that studio. Even before that, before I moved to Tucson, I found all the studios in town and I emailed them all to ask if there was like, if I could like be a fly on the wall or if I could intern or whatever. That, I did get an internship in Tucson that way. So it's really just a matter of like, it's not going on social media and falling into the pit of all of this giant news feed, right? It's like, who can you email and meet today? Like, who's doing stuff around you, right?
Yeah.
And like who's doing, and who can you actually help, right? What do people need? And usually like that ends up helping you in the long run.
That's a really good point. So let's say we feel confident about our guitar playing, but not confident about our ability to write a song and sing it yet. Showing up at those open mic nights and meeting people and just offering to be their second guitar player. I mean, if somebody offered to play guitar with me on my song, there might be the challenge of learning it together, but wow, what a nice gift to offer somebody, to be able to back them up and just be a free musician to help them do their open mic for a future one.
Right. I mean, like, if you were to go and you like somebody's song and you go up to them and it's like, hey, that song, like, I really loved that song. And obviously, like, you have to be sincere about this. But if you go up to people and you genuinely appreciate the craft and the art that they just put out, artists want to hear that. You want to hear from, you don't want to like finish playing and nobody claps and nobody comes up to you afterwards. You want people to talk to you, And so like, if you come up and you're like genuinely flattering and offer assistance, and you don't want to be pushy, because some people like immediately lock up if they feel like there's sale coming or something like that, obviously.
Right.
But if you're like, hey, if you ever need a guitar player, I play acoustic guitar. I've done it for years. If you have examples, you can say that. But like, I'd love to perform with you if you ever put a band together, And then you can go to these open mics, see who's performing, and then you look them up online, and you can email them. You can, like, that's how you might want to create your initial Instagram following, is the people that are actually around your scene that you can contact, because you could follow them on Instagram after a show. You can talk to them after the show in person. It's like, I loved your stuff. If you ever need a guitar player, let me know. And then you follow them on Instagram, and then you follow up with them on Instagram. Like, hey, I just put out this, I'm making all this up, but like, I put out this like instrumental guitar part, for fun on my Instagram. Check it out. If you want a band, if you are putting a band together, let's stay in touch. I'd love to play with you or whatever.
Yeah, or you could say, I put together this thing. What do you think?
Right. Yeah.
Like you're looking for feedback from somebody who you admire.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, this is great. Let me, in the interest of keeping on our schedule here, let me jump to a closing question, because we actually covered everything. That was perfect. But this one, we've asked you before. We'll take the Wayback Studio machine one more time, and you get to go back and find young Björgvin, and you say, listen, sometimes people are just going to call you B, but I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. Pick a time to go back to. What advice do you feel like going back and giving yourself today, in the past? Today, what advice do you feel like going back and giving yourself in the past, if you could?
I would say try to work with as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Have high standards. Like, don't have self-respect, and don't let yourself get sucked into like having terrible clients that take advantage of you and all that stuff. But like, if you're just starting out and you're not necessarily looking to like, and you, especially if you don't need to make money right away, like, prioritize quality portfolio creation over making immediate money, because the cooler people, the work you work with, the earlier you work with cooler people, the cooler your career probably becomes.
Nice.
You know?
Nice.
And so because that will generate like actual stuff that you can refer to that you say that you worked on, that actually makes a portfolio for you that you can show other people in order to create and grow your career.
Dude, that's awesome, man. This has been great to hang out with you and do another podcast episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think this is number 4 for us at this point too.
Yeah.
You were actually one of my very first guests on the show. God, what was the
oh man, I'd love to know how much my tune has changed over the years.
I'm sure it has. You know, you've gone through you were episode 4, the very first one. Yeah. And then episode 76 and then 290. Yeah. And boy, at this point, it's, you know, almost 500. So Rockstars, of course, we have a link to Björgvin's discography, which you can go listen to a bunch of these records he's made. Are some of these with your students as well? Or are these all records that you included? So a bunch of the records from Long Wait.
Yeah.
The Dead West, John Backey, 9 Left Dead, Rachel.
Yeah,
lots of artists.
Most of those I have either mixed. I mixed probably most of them. I maybe only mastered a couple, and then some of them I did like everything, like produced them and all that.
Awesome.
Because you can't really, you know, I can't make notes of that in the Spotify, so I just picked the ones that, you know, represented my overall work.
That's great. So Rockstars, we have a link to that. You can go listen through if you want, and you can hear the previous podcast episodes. Björgvin, where should the Rockstars go if they just want to learn more about you and connect with you? What if they want to check out your writing, your book, they're ready to check out the mixing course on sympathy or any of your other stuff?
Yeah, just go to audio-issues.com or audioissues.com is a good place to start. If you want to check out the book, it's stepbystepmixing.com, or just look for Step by Step Mixing on Amazon. And you can get the EQ at audioissueseq.com. And if you go to the website, just sign up to the email list and you'll get to get more from me.
Now, the EQ does it come with instructions and like course on EQ, how to EQ and use it or anything like that?
There's a separate add-on if you want the
okay, great.
EQ.
There is one that'll show you all the stuff we were talking about. Okay, that's great, man.
Yeah, you can actually go to eqstrategies.net, and it gives you a full package with the EQ as a free bonus with the training materials.
Good deal. Awesome stuff. Well, Rockstars, thank you for hanging with us. It's good to be here talking about all this stuff. I love talking about finishing records because I need to go do it myself. Hopefully we'll never be at the point where we don't need to finish a record, because that means we stop making records.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. It's a good way to put it.
Björgvin, great to see you, dude.
Yeah,
Thanks for hanging with us again. And I'll see you next week on our call.
All right. See you later. Take it easy.
All right, man. Cheers, dude.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this show possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. At empiricallabs.com, Use the code RSR10 for 10% off the Arouser and Big Freak plugins. And finally, use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom patch bay labels at traceaudio.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.